I want to welcome everybody to this demonstration. New evidence and DNA retesting in the JonBenet Ramsey case. Now I'm going to be reacting. This is going to be a reaction demonstration, and I'm going to be reacting to Drop Dead Serious video. So shout out to Drop Dead Serious for this video that I'm going to be reacting to. Salute to the chat. Salute to my moderators. Salute to the replay gang. Now, this was 29 years ago, and it was the day after Christmas when 6-year-old JonBenet Ramsey was just tragically unalive. How many of y'all remember this case? Drop a 1 for me. Drop a 1 in the chat if y'all remember this case. Drop a 2 if you're not familiar with it. And if you're not familiar with it, we're going to spend this time to go over the evidence, and we're going to see, after 29 years, will the JonBenet Ramsey case finally be solved? As I said, whenever dealing with victims, period, it's such a tragedy. But when children are the victims, can any of y'all imagine a 6-year-old child had to experience such a tragic death? But let's just tap right into Drop Dead Serious video, and I will come down there to the chat. Salute to the chat. I see everybody in the chat.
This case forward. Take a look.
This past year, our detectives have conducted several new interviews, as well as recollected new evidence and tested and retested other pieces of evidence to generate new leads. Techniques and technology constantly evolve. This is especially true with technology related to DNA testing. Detectives continue to consult with outside experts from across the country, as well as our state and federal partners, to strategize and explore all options when it comes to evidence testing.
Police are not saying what that evidence is or who has been interviewed or re-interviewed, but they are confirming that new and follow-up interviews have been conducted and that new evidence has been collected. I can't even imagine that. 30 years after the fact, new evidence. What did you find and where, They also say that older evidence has been retested using advances in DNA technology with help from state, federal, and outside experts. And that got me thinking. Outside experts, because boy, oh boy, they seem to be so much better than our official ones, right? Government experts, meh. Outside experts, Othram.
But let me just say this, y'all, and I feel like Autumn feels. I feel like you, Autumn. I've always thought the dad's friend that found her in the cellar room in the basement is the one who did it, if not her brother. I felt the friend. But see, now I do know, of course, DNA, it can really zoom in on, because with the DNA, you can basically link an individual to that crime, like the saliva, semen. If you test it, then. But let's just backtrack 29 years ago, and in this case, and it's just my opinion, and y'all let me know if y'all feel the same way with me. And what I'm about to say as far as the evidence, I'll cover that later on in this demonstration. But I just felt like you really didn't need the DNA. And it's just my personal opinion. I mean, the friend was The last one, I believe the friend or the brother were the last one. But I guess in the court of law is different, right? You can't go by opinions. You can't go by whether or not you feel somebody has done it. The courts want crucial evidence, I guess. Yes, it was the basement. There was like 4 or 5 empty rooms in the basement. They were going to make extra rooms. She was found in the one that was running the plumbing. I see you, Tam. I see y'all. I'm here listening, not feeling well. Throw up some prayer hands for Shelly D. I hope you feel better, Shelly. I see you, Tracy. I see you. Let's tap back into it.
Investigators are once again urging anybody with information, no matter how small, to come forward and tell police. And just as he has for nearly 3 decades, JonBenet's father, John Ramsey, is still waiting for answers and still believing that a breakthrough will come. Earlier on my News Nation show, Banfield, I talked to John Ramsey. Here's our conversation. John, I can't even count how many times you and I meet at this time of year to discuss what's new, what's happening, what's different, what's changed. But something does feel different this year. To hear Chief Redfern say that they've got new evidence, that they've retested old evidence, and that they're using outside experts. Let's start with the new evidence and the retesting of old evidence. Have they told you anything about that?
Well, Chief Redfern told us, gosh, I don't know, September, we had a meeting with him, and that he had submitted evidence for additional DNA testing. He didn't say what evidence it was, but that it was submitted again, or perhaps new. We don't know if it was new or stuff that had been tested before. We, of course, have advocated that if certain evidence that was taken from the crime scene has never been sampled, that it ought to be. The main one being the garrote that was used to strangle my daughter. So it's encouraging. And,
who does that? I got to stop for a second. Who does that? Who strangles a 6-year-old little girl? I mean, even if, just imagine the worst. What could she have done? I mean, 6 years old. And of course, the children back then, they were a different breed. The children back in the 90s, what could they have done? Now, of course, we talking about the children of the day, but even the children of the day, wouldn't a 6-year-old child today couldn't have done anything to warrant being strangled and inappropriately touched. So what possibly could this little girl have done to be strangled and inappropriately touched? Let me backtrack.
The crime scene has never been sampled, that it ought to be. The main one being the garrote that was used to strangle my daughter. So it's encouraging. And, the key really in progress has been the addition of new leadership there. It was not very good for 25, 26 years. And brought in Chief Rep from the outside. I've met with him 3 or 4 times. I'm impressed with him. I think he's sincere and honest. And so I'm encouraged. And, we've advocated.
I can't believe, John, I can't believe that the chiefs in the past haven't seen it as a priority, if only to become, famous in name as the chief that solved.
This is sad because we see this for everybody that's been following the Shanquella Robinson case. The DOJ hasn't prioritized the warrant for Dejanay Jackson to be extradited back to Mexico. Now you have this case, and this is why I say the justice system of America stinks. I want to use the F word, but I'm going to do my best to keep things PG. But the justice, how does the chief Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. How does the chief not prioritize this case? I'm just trying to get some kind of understanding. Shizzy says, that baby. Positive says she did nothing wrong but be a kid. I was 14 when this happened, and I said his friend did it because how did he know she was in that room behind the pipes? Police searched that area 2 to 3 times. There you go. Now, the friend, how did the friend know? So you couldn't get the friend with nothing? You couldn't zoom in on the friend? Now, if this new evidence and if the retesting of the DNA, if it comes back and it proves that the friend is in fact the one that's behind this, that chief, that chief has a lot of accountability to be taken. And in my opinion, that chief should face some jail time, some prison time. My husband's friend wouldn't have a key to my house. Facts. So I believe 90% of us were always zooming in on that friend. But this is crazy work for the chief to not have made the case a prioritized case. You can't make this up. No, they lied at first that John found her because he manipulated it, screaming, John found her.
Priority, if only to become, famous in name as the chief that solved this case. It just defies logic that it's taken 3 decades for someone to come along who maybe does make this a priority and who has the chops. Do you know if they have enlisted labs like Othram? And I bring up Othram because it's famous for having solved murder.
Yeah, no, Othram can do investigative genealogy report, and we've been advocating that in our case. I think if they do, we've got probably a 78% chance of getting an answer. It's been very successful in solving old cold cases. It's kind of the latest and greatest use technology and DNA to solve crimes. And
I'm going to tell you something. When I saw the posting of Chief Redfern, I went down in the comments and I was reading the comments. And John, I'm not going to lie, I was so disheartened to see how many people out there still believe you had something to do with it, despite the fact, and let me repeat this loud and clear, that the Boulder Police and everybody else involved in investigating the murder of your daughter, they have cleared you over and over and over again. And they've gone so far as to apologize for having left you under that umbrella of suspicion for so long, to the point where Patsy died before she was cleared from that umbrella of suspicion. So for anybody watching, if you're one of the commenters, do your research before you make such painful comments about John and his family.
I never thought that the dad had anything to do with it. Drop a 4 if you think the dad or possibly the mom had something to do with it. Drop a 5 if you disagree. I'm dropping a 5 because I never felt as though the mom and dad had anything to do with it. Alicia says she was inappropriately touched, so no one tested the friend against the DNA found on her. Good question, Alicia. John was in the basement looking at the broken window, which no one could fit in but a child. And he went to where she was and yelled out for John. Then as John united her crying, he yelled, John found her. I don't remember hearing the friend found her. All these years, I thought John found her. I always felt so bad for John and Patsy. Yeah, because, man, I'm telling y'all, and for him, he's still alive. I can just imagine the many nightmares that he'd had. I can just imagine, just the guilt. Because regardless of what, a parent, when they lose a child, that parent, that mom or dad always feel as though they could have done more. That mom or dad, when they lose a child, they always feel like they could have protected their child. They could have saved their child. So I can only imagine, John's friend definitely did it. He had a key and found her. He did it. No, that detective debunked the small window theory when he climbed in the window himself.
Okay, that aside, I will say this because you brought it up when we, I think, spoke at CrimeCon, that you wish that they would ask you to re-interview. You wish that they would bring you in so that you could, once again, tell them everything that they might want to know. Is that, I know you got the meeting in January. Is that on the agenda?
Well, we haven't put it on the agenda yet, but we're going to ask for a meeting again in January for an update. And they've always been, at least with Chief Redfern, very cordial in honoring that request. So, they've been fairly quiet about what they're doing. I think if I read between the lines of his latest report that he issued, there's some encouraging words there. And so I'm more optimistic than I've been in a long time, certainly with new leadership. The problem with the old leadership, it was the old guard. These people that were in that police department had never investigated a murder. They decided on day one that we were guilty, literally day one. And that became the conclusion that they tried to fit the evidence to. And of course, they ran into problems because they couldn't fit the evidence.
Right. I should mention as well, just for those who might be dabbling in the case and thinking that they know more than the average Joe, there is unknown male DNA on JonBenet's clothing, multiple different parts of her clothing, not just one piece, multiple different pieces of her clothing have the same unknown male DNA, meaning it's the same DNA from the same person. So that's a critical piece of this, of this mystery. John, have they said to you anything about what new evidence they're referring to and what new interviews they've conducted?
So a quick question before I move on. So they got this DNA, and the DNA that they have is on several clothing items, correct? So they do have this DNA of this person. They just don't know who this person is. So maybe now, after 29 years, maybe they will be able to tell us whose DNA it is. That's what I'm getting. And I'm praying and I'm hoping that they find out who this DNA belonged to. This case needs to be solved. But this is our justice system. This is what we are up against. And I say it all the time. The justice system, in my opinion, sucks for all of us. We all have to fight. Why do we have to fight tooth and nail for justice? If that chief would have brought in outside agencies, then I believe that the case would have been solved. When will we get it through our thick skulls? We need help. You might be good at what you do, but there's always room for someone to come in and help. And in this case, the chief should have been brought in outside agencies.
No, they haven't. And of course, that's one of the questions we'll ask is, okay, what new evidence do you have? Did you test the DNA in the latest format that's necessary to do IgG, investigative genetic genealogy? And that would be very encouraging to us if they've done that. This new technology, it's been around for 3 or 4 years, is really truly an investigative tool that allows police to investigate and look for the killer. The CODIS federal database of DNA it's been around for 30 years. It's frankly a little obsolete, in my opinion.
You know why? You got to have a criminal. And as we know from the Golden State Killer, that guy wasn't a criminal. He was a cop. And so he was caught through genetic genealogy because he wasn't in CODIS, but he was in the family tree of all those folks who've tested their DNA. John, I say it every year. I'm going to say it again. I pray for you. I pray for you and Jan that you will get resolution. You will get justice. And I'm feeling that it's, getting closer, especially with the positive vibes you're getting from the Boulder police. Let's just put our hands together and pray together that you finally get this answer in 2026.
Now we're going to backtrack. Let's backtrack, y'all, because it's been a long time. And let's see if when we backtrack some things, let's see what we remember, and let's see what we run into that we didn't know. Let me see what I can grab for us. I want to go way, way back. Just bear with me. So let's go back to the crime scene, y'all. Let me grab a few comments. I don't think the brother did it because of the inappropriate touching. I know kids do that, but not like that. It could have been a person from the party that they invited. The neighbor said they heard a scream that could have came from the basement echoing. Never will forget this case. I hope they find out before John passes. It has him so depressed. He lives in a small cabin with the mom of the college student who vanished on the college trip in the middle of nowhere. I thought it was the brother for a long time. I can't even remember when my mind changed. Whoever it is done got away with it for most or all of their lives. Yeah, 29 years, Tamara. 29 years that this monster has been free walking the streets. And, my motto is, if you did it once, you'll do it again. So it's no telling who else this monster done the same thing to. I see you, Coy. Happy holidays to everybody that celebrate the holidays. Happy holidays. I see you, Coy. But let's look back at the crime scene, y'all.
Child, beauty queen, JonBenet, Ramsey.
I ain't gonna be able to play that, y'all. I'm gonna play something else. Let me find another one, y'all, because it got that music in it. Let me find something else. You know what? Let's tap into the brother. Let's tap into the brother.
The murder of 6-year-old JonBenet Ramsey captivated the nation, relating that her father, mother, brother, or all three were involved in her killing. Tonight, her brother Burke speaks after 20 years of silence about that painful saga, and new evidence is brought to light. Here's my Nightline co-anchor, Juju Chang.
I remember the casket was small and her eyes were closed. I think one of her eyes was a little bit like droopy or something. I thought that was weird.
How did you?
Now, maybe it's just me, but what the hell is he smiling for? Is it just me, or do anybody else feel the same way I feel? What the hell is he smiling for? Could be just me. Backtrack.
Nightline co-anchor Juju Chang.
I remember the casket was small and her eyes were closed. I think one of her eyes was a little bit like droopy or something. I thought that was weird.
How did you feel seeing her?
A lot of sadness. I don't think I really fully grasped, like, after this, I won't see her again.
Burke Ramsey, now 29, breaking a 20-year silence, coming out of the shadows to speak publicly for the first time about his sister JonBenet's murder in an interview with Dr. Phil.
The next thing I remember, and my dad came and told me JonBenet is in heaven now, and he started crying. Then I started crying.
He was just 9 when his little sister was found viciously strangled in the basement of their own home. The child beauty queen, eternally 6 years old, whose gruesome, unsolved murder became America's fixation. 2 competing theories lingered for years.
To start a podcast with Riverside, all you need is a concept and a way to record it. Here's how it works.
Did an intruder break in and kill? Or were the Ramseys themselves somehow responsible? Burke, who was reportedly paid for the interview, is the only family member in the house the night of the murder who's never come forward with his side of the story.
Did you hit your sister over the head with a baseball bat or a flashlight?
Absolutely not.
Burke says he stayed in bed for hours as dozens of investigators and loved ones swarmed the house.
Critics would say you weren't curious because you already knew. He didn't have to get up and go check because he knew exactly what had happened.
I mean, I didn't know if there's some bad guy downstairs and my dad was chasing off with a gun.
Everyone looks at the interview of Burke and thinks, why is this young man smiling?
Right.
I don't see a smile.
Get the F out, and I dropped the F-bomb. I'm sorry, y'all. Man, get the hell out of here. He doesn't see him smiling. Let's backtrack this, y'all. Let's backtrack this. Now, the reporter, I forgot her name, but she even felt the vibe that I felt. Exactly, right? Why is he smiling? Now, my man gonna come and say, I don't see that he smiled. Man, stop it, y'all. Let's backtrack this, y'all. I gotta backtrack this. Look at him smiling. Now, my man gonna come through and say he didn't see him smile.
I mean, I didn't know if there's some bad guy downstairs and my dad was chasing off with a gun.
Everyone looks at the interview of Burke and thinks, why is this young man smiling?
I don't see a smile as much as I see an uncomfortable facial expression. But I don't see that as smile, happy smile.
Come on, man. Come on, man. You can't make this up. He's definitely smiling. Now, you can try to, twist the narrative and dress it up all you want to, but the brother is definitely smiling. Now, the million-dollar question that I'm going to ask everybody, could a 9-year-old, because he was 9 years old at the time, could a 9-year-old had done to JonBenet Ramsey what was done to her? Anybody? I'll come to my chat for a brief minute. He has some kind of condition. I can't remember what it is. But they addressed his smiling after that Dr. Phil interview. I think that's when I changed my mind about her brother. Yes, yeah, the story made me mad. How come it's taking all these years, still haven't exposed the real Red Rummer? Why does he have a smile on his face? Weird. Why is he smiling so much? As a sibling and mom of an autistic sister and son, he gives autism to me. I don't care how many years, I will be emotional as hell. Facts. He's smiling hard too. Facts. Alicia says he's smiling and laughing at something. Facts. The brother is a weirdo. Yes. Absolutely. What if he's autistic? Absolutely could. Autumn, it's called Rich. Thank God for mitochondrial DNA test. That's Rex was identified as the Long Island serial killer. Woo. He could be. I have an autistic cousin and nephew. He could have, yes, but I don't think he would have hit her so good. He would have put her in the bed or something. I see you, Tari. I see you, Tari.
I see that as uncomfortable guy.
ABC's chief legal analyst Dan Abrams spent years covering the saga.
Burke Ramsey has been one of the most sought-after interviews by every news and tabloid organization out there because back at the time, people were saying, oh, maybe Burke did it, or what does Burke know?
At the time, the incessant media attention smothered the family under a cloud of suspicion.
Burke.
Then 9-year-old Burke was not immune. Years later, John Ramsey, JonBenet and Burke's father, told me that they were simply trying to protect their 9-year-old from the media onslaught.
There was one day when he and Patsy managed to escape the paparazzi, and they made it to a grocery store, and there was a headline that Burke
brother did it.
And he burst into tears.
Yeah,
well, what was his reaction?
Well, Burke's a very quiet, private person. We tried very hard to keep Burke's life normal, and that just was like a huge interruption to that.
The mystery began the morning after Christmas 20 years ago with a horrifying ransom note left in the Ramsey home, demanding $118,000 in exchange for the safe return of their little girl.
What's going on there, ma'am? We have a kidnapped. Hurry, please explain to me what's going on, okay? There's a note left in our daughter's door.
But soon, John Ramsey, JonBenet's father, found her lifeless body in the basement, a moment he told me about in 2012.
When I found her, it was a rush of relief. And then, of course, within moments, I realized that she probably was dead. But she was back in my arms.
What are y'all thoughts, y'all? I'm going to have to backtrack, y'all. Appreciate this super sticker, Autumn. What are y'all thoughts? Could the dad? Now, I still don't believe that the dad was involved. But after backtracking this and hearing this, could the dad had covered for the son? Let's backtrack this, y'all. Let's backtrack.
The mystery began the morning after Christmas 20 years ago with a horrifying ransom note left in the Ramsey home, demanding $118,000 in exchange for the safe return of their little girl.
What's going on there, ma'am? We have a kidnapped. Hurry, please explain to me what's going on, okay? There's a note left in our daughter's door.
But soon, John Ramsey, JonBenet's father, found her lifeless body in the basement, a moment he told me about in 2012.
All right, now, the ransom note, right? Man. So you got a ransom note. But then the body is found in the actual home. Man. Appreciate this super sticker, Autumn. I'm gonna have to just let it ride out, y'all, because I got a lot of questions, and maybe my questions will be answered if I just let it just ride. So Autumn says that's what I don't understand is the note in Patsy's handwriting. That's exactly where I'm at, Autumn. Let me backtrack, y'all. Let's backtrack this. All right. So, hold up, y'all. Bear with me. Listen carefully. A group of individuals. All right.
20 years ago with a horrifying ransom note left in the Ramsey home, demanding $118,000 in exchange for the safe return of their little girl.
What's going on there, ma'am? We have a kidnapped. Hurry, please explain to me what's going on, okay? There's a note left in our daughter's door.
But soon, John Ramsey, JonBenet's father, found her lifeless body in the basement.
Drop a 7. Drop a 7 if y'all think Patsy wrote the note. Drop a 8 if you think she didn't. Drop a 7 if you think Patsy wrote the note. Drop a 8 if you don't think she wrote it.
But soon, John Ramsey, JonBenet's father, found her lifeless body in the basement, a moment he told me about in 2012.
When I found her, it was a rush of relief. And then, of course, within moments, I realized that she probably was dead. But she was back in my arms.
The family home, hours after the discovery, captured in these crime scene videos, seen for the first time in an investigation discovery docuseries airing this week. JonBenet had been strangled with a garrote, her her skull fractured, and there were signs of sexual abuse. At first, investigators found no apparent signs of a break-in, and the Ramsey family came under the investigative microscope. Burke, too, placed under the harsh lights of the interrogation room.
When was the last time you saw JonBenet alive?
As seen in these newly discovered tapes of police interviews, included in an A&E documentary, the theory was that Burke killed her accidentally, and the family was covering up the crime. Inside the Ramsey home, a flashlight, heavy enough to be a murder weapon. The strangulation device made from the broken handle of Patsy's paintbrush. The bizarre ransom note was found to have been written on Patsy's notepad.
The ransom note is the single most important piece of evidence that led the authorities to think it had to be someone in the house.
i.e. John and Patsy Ramsey.
Because who else would have the time, they would say, to write that intricate note and practice it beforehand, other than someone trying to cover up a crime?
I can feel them on that. I can feel them on that. Wow. Wow.
The police play hardball, bluffing about the evidence they have.
We have trace evidence that appears to link you to the death of JonBenet. What would you tell me?
But Patsy never wavered, always adamant about their innocence.
Go back to the damn drawing board. I didn't do it. John Ramsey didn't do it, and we didn't have a clue of anybody who did do it.
Outside the Ramseys' home, a constant crush of cameras.
Looking back on it, it looks like madness. But at the time, we were so crushed by the loss of our child that it didn't matter.
John and Patsy Ramsey were never charged with the crime, but were nonetheless skewered in the court of public opinion.
This is the first time that you've sat for an extended interview.
They eventually tried to set the record straight with Barbara Walters.
Mr. Ramsey, did you kill JonBenet?
No, I did not.
Mrs. Ramsey, did you kill your daughter?
No, I did not kill my daughter.
But if not the Ramseys, then who did it?
JonBenet was a pedophile's dream come true.
Lou Smith, the late detective who was brought in by the Boulder District Attorney's Office to conduct an independent investigation, believed a sexual predator killed JonBenet.
I believe he brought her down to the farthest, deepest part of that basement and did very brutal things to her.
Smith uncovered evidence that had reportedly been overlooked by the Boulder police. A broken window where the killer could have entered. A footprint. Marks on JonBenet, indicative of a stun gun.
That was a little parade in Charlevoix.
When I spoke to John Ramsey in 2012, he had a lingering sense of regret. Child beauty pageants made him uncomfortable, and he told me if he had another chance, he wouldn't let JonBenet compete publicly.
Were you naive about letting her compete in pageants?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
But your lesson was, what if we inadvertently exposed her to the killer?
Obviously, you don't want to keep him locked in the house, but it's just an awareness. Not everyone around you is a nice, good person.
A re-examination of the DNA evidence using new technology found an unidentified male's DNA on JonBenet's underpants.
So if it's an unidentified DNA, right? Now, y'all correct me if I'm wrong. Appreciate this super sticker, Autumn. I do have a goal of 15 super stickers or super chats. If you would like to help me reach my goal, 11 super stickers or super chats away from me reaching my goal, just click on the $ symbol and purchase a super sticker or a super chat. Now, this DNA, I'm sure that the DNA would have came back as John's DNA. I'm sure the DNA would have came back as the brother's DNA. These type of cases are so complicated, and it almost makes you wonder, was it premeditated? Was it planned? Did they plan this? Anybody want to take a shot at it? Do y'all think that it was planned? But some of the cases when these criminals or whatever you may call them, when they do get away with these type of crimes, most of the times they're not planned. Most of the times when you plan, that's most of the times when you get caught. That's just my observation. That's just my observation. Let me jump to my chat for a few. That's possible too. Another pageant. Dad, my question, they had money, did they had cameras, and one wasn't facing the entrance to the basement or outside? No problem, Shank. They would have known if it was their DNA. Yes, okay. We're on the same page. The mom and dad was a little weird. I can guess it was the brother. So did they not take DNA from the dad, brother, mother, friend, and they keep DNA for years, may pop up in the system after all these years? Well, now they're saying they do have new evidence, Coy, and also they're retesting the DNA. Now, when they retest the DNA, could it be the father's DNA after all? See, when it comes to the DNA, it can get real tricky. I do know that the DNA can be real tricky. The DNA was not from any of the family members. Right, didn't have cameras. Someone said Patsy was selling JonBenets, but that sounds crazy, but people are weird.
Essentially clearing the Ramsey family.
This is the only case where I think I have fundamentally turned as much as I have, thinking probably to no way over the course of an intense investigation.
The new district attorney, Mary Lacey, took the extraordinary step of formally exonerating the Ramseys. But vindication didn't come soon enough for the Ramseys. Patsy died from ovarian cancer in 2006. Today, John is remarried and lives a quiet life in Michigan.
I struggled a lot with forgiveness and what that meant. The first phase was, I can't forgive this creature. Let me get hands on him. We won't need a trial.
Well, no one would blame you for being angry and bitter.
And I was for a time, absolutely. But you can't stay there, and because it's damaging to you as a person. It's a gift to give yourself, to let it go.
As for Burke, he's now a software engineer and once again back in the headlines.
It's sort of surprising that Burke gave up his anonymity.
And I think in retrospect, it was probably a mistake. I don't think he came across that well, even though he's totally innocent.
And yet 20 years later, JonBenet's case, still an unsolved murder. The Boulder police chief releasing this video statement.
We remain focused on this investigation and finding justice for JonBenet.
Her murder remains America's great whodunit mystery, still haunting the public imagination.
And this is why, even though it can happen to children, that's not in the limelight. But this is why, and I say it also, but this is why most people don't like when parents exploit their children at this young age and put them out there in the limelight. That little baby, Miss Shirley. I'm totally against Miss Shirley's mom. Miss Shirley is no more than 4 years old and got her entertaining adults, grown men and grown women. But this is why, as parents, I know your child is handsome, your child is cute. I know your child is, a star and all of that. But as a parent, is this something that you want to entertain your child? Or because there are monsters out here, there are creeps out here, and they play on situations like this, and you don't know who you're bringing around your child. I'm going to go to something else in the case, y'all. Bear with me. All right.
I saw it in John's eye. I knew he was the killer. It's crazy. And, but that's how I got started.
I knew what happened.
There is singularly nothing normal about this.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Behavioral Arts. My name is Spidey, and I use my degree in sociology and psychology, my certifications in criminal interrogation and body language analysis, and over 10 years' experience as an award-winning mentalist to teach people behavioral analysis and practical psychology on stage and television shows all over the world. Just last week, Netflix released a 3-part docuseries called Cold Case: Who Killed JonBenet Ramsey? And it's all about one of the most notorious cold cases in American crime history. In December of 1996, John and Patsy Ramsey woke up and found a very strange ransom letter in their house. They also found that their daughter, JonBenet, was missing. After the police had arrived, John, while searching the house, found the body of his daughter in the basement, behind a door that the police had walked by but not searched previously. What followed was one of the most confusing stories and investigations ever. The police force mishandled some of the situation, the media mishandled some of the information, and so there was a whole bunch of people out there who were convinced that John and Patsy had some involvement, and then a whole bunch of other people who were convinced that they didn't. And it just became this big, chaotic story. Now, more than 25 years later, Netflix releases this documentary where they share old interviews, new interviews with law enforcement, people who were involved in the case, and John Ramsey himself, who is not joined by Patsy because she passed away in 2006. But what do all of their body language, facial expressions, and word choice reveal about the truth of what happened back then? And what could a directed documentary 28 years after the fact reveal in the first place? Are these behaviors reliable, or are we way past the point of being able to figure what happened on that day? I have an extremely special guest joining us this week to look at all of this, the old interviews, the new interviews, and figure out what's going on here and what can we deduce from all this information. This is somebody that you've heard me talk about on the channel countless times. He served 25 years as a special agent in the FBI, and although most people know him for his work in counterintelligence and behavioral analysis, he also spent quite a few years working homicide on government reservations. He's not just a best-selling author on the subject of body language, he is the best-selling author in the world on the subject of body language and behavioral analysis. And I am thrilled to welcome to the channel my friend, Joe Navarro.
It's great to be here with you, Spidey. This has been a long time coming, so thank you for having me on your program.
Absolutely thrilled to jump into this analysis with someone that I have just so many questions for concerning this case. So let's dive right into it.
Mr. Ramsey, listen carefully.
We are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction.
We respect your business, but not the country that it serves.
At this time, we have your daughter in our possession.
You will withdraw $118,000 from your account.
I will call you between 8 and 10 a.m. tomorrow to instruct you on delivery.
Any deviation of my instructions will result in the immediate execution of your daughter.
Speaking to anyone about your situation, such as police, FBI, etc., will result in your daughter being beat.
Is that I'm coming, y'all. Is that what this is about? I'm coming, y'all. Appreciate this super sticker, Shay. I didn't. Oh man. And it's been so long, and I do apologize, y'all, because it's just been so long since I, been caught up on this case. But like Autumn and someone else said, Patsy wrote that note. I think Q said that as well. Now, if Patsy wrote the note, Autumn says, look up the home for pictures of the basement. It's 749 15th Street, Boulder, Colorado, area code 0302. The address was changed from its original 755 15th Street in June 2001 to throw off buyers, but it didn't work. Wow. Let me ask the question again, y'all. Could John and Patsy, could they been behind JonBenet, Red Rum? Corey says maybe Patsy was cheating, gave her daughter up to extort John. Just saying, I'm speculating. But that's a good question, Corey, because believe it or not, people do some strange things for some change. So that's a possibility. But this is the FBI agent.
Don't try to grow a brain, John. You're not the only fat cat around. So don't think that will be.
So, well, of course, we know whoever it is that wrote it, they had to know John. Patsy might have been held at gunpoint writing that.
Situations such as police, FBI, etc., will result in your daughter being beat.
Don't try to grow a brain, John. You're not the only fat cat around. So don't think that will be difficult.
Wow. Alicia says there's too much evidence in this case for it not to be solved. This is crazy. That's what I said, Alicia, because she had to know, they know it was her handwriting. The parents were cleared and passed many lie detector tests. Now that's true.
It is up to you now, John.
Victory, SBTC.
I was going through the notebook that contained Patsy's handwriting, and I came across an entire sheet of paper in the notebook, still attached with what appeared to be the initial ransom note. It said Mr. and then like maybe the initial vertical stroke of an R.
Okay, so the ransom note. I have a lot of questions about this. So there are things that on the surface seem odd about this that have been talked about. And then there are things that from a behavioral analysis standpoint, I find odd that I want to ask you about. And here's what they are really roughly. So a lot of people have noticed that the ransom amount was odd. Another thing that some people noticed is how long this thing is. This thing is almost 3 pages long, which I want to ask you about. You know, is that a normal length? But the thing that I noticed that stood out to me is a line in there that says, I mean, there's a few lines, but one is, we respect your business, but not the country that it serves. This doesn't seem like, to me, something that would be in a ransom letter, like this purpose, this kind of mission statement that I would expect to see on a corporate website. You know, it's like, it kind of seems to me like somebody just watched a bad crime drama and said, oh, I'm going to make this seem like this is like a terrorist thing going on here using the royal we. And that's another thing. There's a shift of pronoun. The author goes from we to I. So there's that. So I wanted to ask you all these things. Like, is the length normal? Is the amount normal? Is this, we respect your business, but not the country that it serves normal? What is this thing?
It's never been easier to start a podcast than with Riverside. Here's how it works. First, go to Riverside.
There is singularly nothing normal about this. First of all, if you're going to kidnap somebody, you can't assume there's going to be pen and paper available to you so you can write a note.
Right.
Second of all, this isn't just a note. This is a philippic, okay? This is one of the lengthiest messages that I've ever seen. You know, the FBI has a collection of all the ransom notes that have ever been issued. Nothing comes close to this. Let's start from the beginning. The fact that it starts with an honorific, with Mr. Ramsey, how utterly polite. I mean, you just have to question, where is this going? Because that immediately jumps at you. But also, you know, this is written at, standard writing is somewhere between the 6th and the 8th grade level. This is way above that. And so that makes you begin to question who would do this. If you're going to place your life in jeopardy, are you going to do it for $118,000? You know, usually things are rounded off to, hey, I want $1 million or I want $250,000. The smallest amount I'm familiar with, and it was a case I worked, was, you know, they wanted $250,000. 118,000, highly suspicious.
Yeah, and you all pointed that out in the chat. 118,000, like, who does that? You know, who throws an odd, maybe 125,000, maybe 175. If it's, come on, you don't, when has 8 been a ransom? 118, 148, 138 is what I'm saying. Usually it's 150,000, 110,000. Usually it's a 0 and a 5. Now, somebody correct me if I'm wrong. If you're asking for a ransom, 145,000, 570,000, but 118,000. The note was written by someone they knew. They wrote the same way the mother writes. I can write 5 totally different ways myself. I feel you, Kia. But I slightly disagree, just a little bit, because, I mean, what's the chances of, and it's chances now, but what's the chances of somebody writing exactly like the mother? So I just disagree just a little bit. Coy says, right. It was the amount of John's Christmas bonus, I think. My mom popped checks in the 90s and had fill out the check. She had me sign her name and she wrote the numbers because the bank check signature and company name for handwriting analysis. And so they knew, so she knew they know. More from the FBI agent.
Here's what's interesting. No faction calls itself a faction. I've worked Abu Nidal. I've worked Islamic Jihad. I've worked every group that's out there. They've never referred to themselves as a faction. Only outsiders refer to them as a faction. As you said earlier, it's like somebody was watching television and decided to incorporate that in there. Look, you do a horrific crime, even as a psychopath, you know that you're going to minimize your exposure. You simply put down, I have your daughter, call by 8 p.m. this number, or bring $500,000 at this location, or your daughter is dead, and you're out of there. You're not going to go into this tome of rhetoric. I just had never seen anything like it. Every agent that I talked to that had worked kidnapping cases, I asked, have you ever seen anything like this? No, nothing like it.
I also think that the shift in pronoun is an indication that the person forgot what they were doing, because it starts with a we, we represent this, we are that. And then towards the end of it, it's I will do this, I will do that. And the pronoun shifts to me always stand out. Like, why did it start by you referring to this as a we, as a group project, and all of a sudden it's just you?
Yeah, I agree with you. Pronoun shifts. But the mere fact that you had this honorific of Mr. Ramsey, you're showing respect to someone that you just took their daughter. And here's the other thing: a stranger doesn't know what your house looks like. They don't know what's on the floor. They don't know. I bump into things in my own house that they could move around and ambulate around this house in total silence. Is highly suspicious to me.
Especially because it's a confusing house. Have you seen the plan of the house? It's a nightmare. It's a labyrinth. There's stairs everywhere going up and down narrow hallways. It's really hard to navigate.
Yeah, and there's furniture, there's all sorts of artifacts, boxes and things, and you're not turning the lights on. Meanwhile, you may possibly be struggling with the child. So it just has so many flaws in it, in the way that it's written, in the things that it addresses, and I think those cannot be ignored in any way.
Before we move on to the next clip, I just want to say one last thing about the ransom letter, and it's the fact that it's been a while now since the crime. It's been well over 20 years, and there have been a lot of theories as to what happened. People out there think it was the parents, a family friend, someone who knew the family, some other criminals who were guilty of similar activities in the area, some of which are known, some of which are unknown. But the thing about this ransom letter is that it doesn't correspond with a single one of those theories. Not one of those individuals that people are suspecting would it have made sense for them to write this letter. It has nothing to do with any of the theories.
I think that's a great point, and I agree with you. Even those who have alleged that it could have been a workmate this does not match in any way any of the theories in any way. I think that's a very good point.
Do you mind taking us through the day? Just the timeline.
Well, it's hard, but we were planning to leave early that morning. That was the day after Christmas. We'd had a big Christmas at home, and now we were going to leave early on the 26th. I was shaving, I guess, in the bathroom, and I heard Patsy scream, and she'd gone downstairs to the kitchen and found this ransom note. And it was just unbelievable.
Okay, so Mr. Navarro, you were actually on duty when this case was revealed to the public and it was progressing, and I'm sure you had a lot of notes about the details of this. So walk us through that. Walk us through what your thoughts were on the case, and also what your thoughts are on analyzing this documentary now, decades later, as it pertains to the details of the case.
Sure, that's a great question, and in fact, I was on duty, and I remember. I mean, this was headline news. The coverage was daily and nightly, and I mean like 24 hours a day. And having been trained in criminal profiling, in fact, I was trained by John Douglas. I started to think, how could this have happened? Because one of the things you learn in profiling is how do you go from being a low-risk victim, which JonBenet Ramsey was. She lived in a very nice neighborhood, very upscale. How do you go from being a low-risk victim to all of a sudden becoming a high-risk victim, being victimized the way she was, and then this whole thing with the ransom note, which even in the beginning people looked at it very suspiciously. There was even at the time the speculation that perhaps the investigators had failed to do a more thorough job because they were awed by the fact that this was a wealthy family, and that perhaps because it was a low-risk neighborhood that they had little experience in investigating these matters. I'm not here to judge that. What I am saying is these factors from the very beginning were red flags that were jumping out at us and made us question what is going on and why was this individual in particular targeted. I think it's important to remember that everything that we're seeing, I mean, this is 20, 25 years or more after the fact, that any interview that we're witnessing now is staged. The individuals involved are contacted ahead of time. There's people behind the camera, there are directors, there's producers. And I know most of the people that watch your channel, Spidey, are interested in the science behind that. And you have to recognize, okay, this is a staged event. I'm going to listen to what they say. I'm going to pick up on some of the nonverbals. You see Mr. Ramsey with the hand draped over the other one. He's very placid, very controlled, and so forth. This is a man who's been gone through a lot. He lost his wife to cancer. He lost his daughter to a traumatic event that we don't know what was behind it. So years later, what we're looking at is, in a way, nothing like what he was experiencing at the time. And I think that's important for all of us to recognize.
I agree completely, and I love that you touched on this because there are quite a few challenges to taking this documentary and analyzing it and trying to find what's actually going on. Some of these things you already touched on flawlessly. So first and foremost, this has been a long time since the events took place. And not only has it been a long time, and we know that memory is a flawed system, there's a lot of research out there that shows us that after a certain amount of time, our memory just isn't that reliable because memory is built for survival, not accuracy. So yes, there are certain things that are etched into his memory forever. He'll never forget. But there are certain details that with time, it just gets modified in the telling and retelling of the story. But that's the second thing we have to keep in mind. He has told and retold the story. He's been on documentaries. He's been on, he's been at CrimeCon telling the story. He's been on podcasts. And in retelling that again and again, he finds a certain rhythm for telling it a certain way, which we'll talk about a few things in a moment here.
Let me just slide in, y'all, for a second. Was there an insurance policy? Can anybody let me know? I'm sure they had insurance out on her. Could that have been a motive? Like I said, people do some strange things for some change. So Did that ever come out? Anybody have any idea about an insurance policy? Let me know.
Another thing to keep in mind that for me is a huge consideration with cases like this is the fact that this man knows that a very large part of the audience does not believe him, thinks that he's involved in this. And there's research out there that shows us that people who fear not being believed behave the way liars behave in often cases, because they're trying to convince you because they know you don't believe them. So all of a sudden, as opposed to that straightforward method of telling truths, they start to pitch it. They start to oversell things a little bit because they know you might not believe them. So that narrative that's out there that he may be involved in this is going to play with those emotions. And finally, as you said, and I think this is the biggest point, this is directed. There's producers, there's directors. They're saying, okay, build the drama. Try to get us to this point. Try to pull the viewer in. Do it this way. Do it that way. Get this emotion in there. So being directed and having to put on not just an informative program, but an entertaining one makes it so that, yeah, he's going to have certain behaviors that we wouldn't see in normal interview or, in your case, Mr. Navarro, interrogation settings. So, and behaviorally, we're seeing certain cues with that. Right at the end of his story, right at the end of this clip that we just saw, we see a number of things that you talk about, things that you teach, happening in quick succession. And it all happens before he says that it was unbelievable. So before we go into the meaning of it, do you want to point out a few things that we saw in the nonverbal just before he said unbelievable?
So, we saw a little lip licking. We saw a little distortion of the mouth, a little bit of compression of the commissures, the corner of the mouth. We see a little shrug. And these behaviors obviously stand out. Now, the question is, what do they mean in context?
Completely agreed. So yes. There's also a no gesture like this, which I often say is the most misinterpreted gesture in all of body language, because so many people online will see the no gesture and go, the person's being deceptive, or they're holding something back. That's not necessarily true. We see this no gesture with a lot of things. Like you might see with disbelief. Somebody might come back from vacation and go, we had such an unbelievable time. Like you wouldn't believe how amazing this was. So yes, some kind of inner conflict, certainly, but not necessarily disagreement or deception.
That's true. That's true to a degree. I mean, well, this is one thing that we know for sure. We know that there's new evidence. We know that the DNA is being retested. My thing is it going to be the dad or someone who was turning that basement into a hotel type setup that was happening and was almost finished? They just had to put windows in each room for a fire hazard. Some people believe too that they took her and brought her back and tied her dead body up because police said they looked in that room. I bet it was someone in their neighborhood. Yes, that may be viewed the home before they move in, but I truly believe it was John's friend or someone that attended their Christmas party and snooped in the house, or a construction worker. Let's do John's friend tomorrow. All right. Yes, there was one. I don't remember an insurance policy. Child actors, pageant queens get extra on life insurance policies on infants like JonBenet are usually $25K or so at max. Let tomorrow's demonstration, make sure y'all pull back up tomorrow at 10 p.m. We're gonna tap into the friend. Do Fleet White tomorrow. We're gonna tap into the friend. All right. And if y'all have any information that y'all want me to go over, send it to my DM on Instagram. My Instagram is Shankrock. So if y'all have anything on the friend that y'all would like to share with me, make sure y'all send it to my Instagram. And I'll see everybody back tomorrow at 10 p.m. I'll leave the chat running and you all can hang around. I appreciate the super stickers and super chats to help me reach my goal. Autumn, and Shay C. Appreciate y'all. Super stickers. And if you would like to help me reach my goal, you could click on the $ symbol. So I will leave the chat running, and y'all can hang around, and I'll see everybody back tomorrow at 10 p.m. We're going to chop it up about the friend. Salute, everybody.
But yes, there's also the mouth, the tension in the mouth. There's that one-sided shoulder shrug. So it's a little cluster that stands out. And I think, so we could look at that and jump to the conclusion, there's something here that's stressing him out. Something, maybe he's being deceptive about this letter, or he's not giving us the full truth. It could be that, but I think we should consider another explanation that goes back to what you said earlier, the fact that this is a documentary. And I've been on the set of a lot of reality TV documentaries, and I know that a lot of the time, the directors or producers are giving instructions for the person to tell the story in a compelling way that pulls the viewer in. So they might have told him, only bring us to that point where the letter was found, because then we're going to do some other stuff. We're going to cut to something else. So just bring us to that point to build the suspense. So whereas normally he would just go on from there. You know, she found this letter. She brought it to me. It said this. He consciously, potentially had to stop there, which is why we see him kind of stall and go, okay, how do I put a bow on this? And we might see him like looking for that word, a bit of tension, a bit of a shoulder shrug, you know, showing uncertainty, not sure what to say here. It was unbelievable. And that's what he says, unbelievable, which is such a vague word. It's a suspenseful, intense word. So it's very possible that we saw that because he was looking on how to end this segment, and he came up with, and he looks up, unbelievable.